Bases dropped on a new edition of Soccer Down here. It's Power Hour on a Saturday. We haven't been with you in a little while. It's been very, very busy. I'm sure you guys have heard, if you're in the soccer world, what happened after we signed off on Wednesday. Diego Maradona passed away. We were just starting to get the reports about ambulances out to his home where he was recovering from surgery, and it was honestly minutes after we signed off that the reports broke in Argentina, and they just concluded a 3 days of national mourning. He's been laid to rest in the ceremony in the cemetery where his parents are. He lied in state at the Casa Rosada. I mean, it's been madness in Argentina. It's been madness worldwide, to be perfectly honest. Pretty much every major league in the world is doing some kind of ceremony to honor him. Leagues are doing a minute of silence at the beginning of matches. Some leagues are stopping at the 10th minute to do a moment of silence. The Argentine league, they're in the Copa Liga Profesional right now. They've renamed that to be the Copa Diego Armando Maradona. So many different things, like worldwide. I mean, Napoli has been grief-stricken as well. If you haven't seen the scenes from the São Paulo Stadium, which sounds like will be renamed the Diego Armando Maradona Stadium. Not every day that you have a stadium that is named for a saint be renamed for a kind of saint in Naples. That's where you're at. So there's going to be plenty more conversation. We'll be talking about it a lot. I mean, it's not like this goes away. You know, this is the greatest figure of most of our generations in the game. If you haven't listened to it, I highly recommend the Hand of Pod podcast. It's a podcast that's been around for 10 years, an English language podcast about Argentine football. And it's honestly one of the inspirations for us doing this, because I love the way that they did it. There was no frills. I mean, you'd hear birds chirping, dogs barking in the background. Huh, sounds familiar, doesn't it? They've done a great job covering the game, and they had a great roundtable discussion from all different perspectives. People who, were Argentine, grew up in Argentina during the greatness on the field of Maradona, people who came to him later, people who, moved to Argentina and have, tried to make sense of all of it. It's a great discussion. It's about 90-plus minutes. It's worth your time. I highly recommend it. And so many other tributes. Players, clubs, federations. I mean, you name it, they've probably made some kind of a tribute to Diego Maradona in recent days. It's worth some time to kind of read up on those. There's a number of great articles. Jorge Valdano, his former teammate, wrote a great piece for El País in Spain, where he does a regular column. Guillem Bilage has written many great things already about it, and he's in the process of writing a book that will probably take a very different turn now. Guillem might have to go back to the drawing board a little bit on writing that book. It's supposed to come out next year. So many different things out there. It is worth your time. He is the greatest. I mean, on the field, at his peak, there's nobody who can touch him, and there never will be anything like him again. There'll be other great players. There'll be other players who maybe surpass him on the field, but nothing will be like what he was, because it's of a very specific time. I mean, this is a kid who honestly never grew up. He was 15 years old when he broke into the first division in Argentina, and he was probably about that old, maybe 16, when he became a national icon and became a representation of what it means to be Argentine. That's a lot of pressure. Then he went to Barcelona. It didn't work out all that well. He goes to Napoli, and it's even more of a representation of not just what it means to be Argentine, but what it means to be Neapolitan in a lot of ways. And he represents Naples in so many different ways. Far from perfect, and you'll never hear me argue against that. Criticized very unfairly at times, and some of the English media comments and some of the American media comments as well have been flat out embarrassing and incredibly disrespectful. Very disappointed in the Washington Post's Instagram post that focused on everything but what he did on the field and anything good that he accomplished in his life, and that's cheap shot. Some of the English stuff has been absolute cheap shots. Peter Shilton, stop talking right now, please. Nobody cares, all right? Nobody cares. This is a sad time for football in general, because if you love the game and you love what it can be from a mythical, from a dreamlike state, from the things that you don't expect to be able to happen that he made happen. If you like teams that park the bus and play defensively and do nothing positive, then you're not really going to care, are you? If you like players who dare to dream, if you like players who dare to try things, if you like players who dare to do the unexpected, then you feel this, because that's what he brought out. And, you know, it's going to be a conversation for a long time in Argentina. It's probably never going to go away. It's going to be a conversation in, you know, just the game as a whole. So we'll always be talking about it on this show, because I wouldn't be doing this show if I hadn't seen Diego Maradona as a kid. That's just reality. It'll get easier as we go, for sure. But, yeah, it's still a hard time. It's still a hard time for a lot of people, because whatever you think of him off the field, and he was very flawed, don't get me wrong. And he did a lot of things that I think are awful. No way around that. He's still a legend on the field, and he still brought so much joy to people that deserves to be respected as well. So he's my soccer hero, and he always will be, because he's what made me dream about trying to play and trying to do things other than just running a straight line and kick a ball straight. You know, whenever I would flick a ball up over an opponent, you know, I'd be like, oh, I saw Maradona do that once. Cool. You know, it's stuff like that. So that's going to hang a cloud over everything today. It's going to hang a cloud over everything for a while. Let's just not be, you know, let's just be real about this. But there is a lot going on today, and we're going to get into that. John, I haven't had a chance to really talk to you since, you know, all that happened right after we went off the air. Is there anything that stood out to you about some of the remembrances or things going on before we jump into all the chaos today?
Yeah, just a couple things. I was gravitated to Teisei, and thank you for the heads up on that. I was gravitated to Teisei when I was finally landlocked and just watched an entire country respond the way that it did. I had a 4-hour drive from Office HD to go to the boss's hometown, be with her and her mother-in-law for Thanksgiving. And I had the Live is Life video on repeat in the car for hours, just remembering it. And it's almost to the point now where I can look at it and close my eyes and I can, you know, visualize that entire video. And
they're playing that in the stadiums in Italy this weekend, by the way.
Yeah.
That they're playing that song and that video during the warm-ups in Italy. They did it at Ajax too during, I guess it was Champions League on Wednesday. Nicolas Tagliafico, I think there's one or two other Argentines in that team, requested it. And you could see them like trying to get into it a little bit. That was very cool.
Yeah, and I found the 2-minute version, and then there's a 4-minute version where they took the Top of the Pops version from Opus and did the video and did an extended version for the 4 minutes. And so I had both of those pretty much on repeat in the car on the way down. And, you know, just to see all of the different outpourings, all the different sports. I think it was, 4 o'clock this morning where the video was released of the All Blacks with their tribute to Maradona, where they had the jersey and they laid it at midfield before they did the haka in their competitive match. And it shows you the impact that Maradona had not only in his sport, but with other athletes in other sports. And this was just another example of that. And I was buzzing through a lot of different articles, reading up on what folks were saying. Carlo Ancelotti was quoted in The Guardian, and I pulled that quote up this morning. Ancelotti says, he was my opponent, and then he became my friend. He was very humble, and it is a big loss for football, but the memories will always be there. He was a fantastic player who helped football around the world at this time. He was the best player in the world and the best player I ever played against. And that's just part of the quote. And so I would recommend, if you have The Guardian or have access to it, Andy Hunter's piece yesterday from when he talked to Carlo Ancelotti.
Yeah, the Guardian's actually done a really good job with a lot of their things. Marcelo Mora Araujo, who did the translation for Diego's autobiography that he wrote, years ago. She did the translation for it. She wrote a piece and it kind of explaining a little bit, because I think, and I've had this conversation with different people, and we talked about it on 92.9 yesterday, trying to explain this in a sports context, it doesn't really work. Because there's not an athlete in this country that would get this type of reaction. You saw the outpouring for Kobe Bryant when he died unexpectedly. Muhammad Ali is probably one that's in the ballpark, but even that was nothing like what we're seeing in just Argentina about Maradona, not even going worldwide, just in Argentina. And there's so much of him and who he was and who he represented in the Argentine way of thinking about themselves and just the way that they see themselves. And he was that kid who wasn't supposed to make it, who made it, and in a lot of ways never changed. He didn't become. And if you watch the Maradona documentary, and I watched it again, I know a lot of people have here in the last couple of days, there's an Italian pundit who is talking when things started to turn against him in Italy, who says, without saying it directly, and I don't know if people necessarily got it at the time, he says one of the reasons that people grew to hate Maradona and dislike Maradona in Italy was that he was a poor guy from a poor family who made it and didn't change. He wasn't supposed to make it. He did. And he was still himself. He never apologized for who he was. He never tried to be like the upper class. He always fought for the lower class and always represented the lower class. And in a lot of ways, he never grew up. And how could you? How could you? The whole idea that his trainer talked about with Diego and Maradona being two separate people. That's how you survive. We could talk about this so much. There's so many other people who have direct links and have talked about it. I just recommend, if you have some time this weekend, to kind of go through like the hashtag Diego Eterno. There's a lot of great things there in Spanish that you can translate. So much out there. Fanatis has created a special section. They have the 10 hours of the number 10 that they ran, I think, late last year. They might have run it actually early during the pandemic. It's 10 hours of just archival footage from Argentine television and games, and it's on the field, it's off the field, it's everything. And it's just all kind of thrown together, which is kind of fitting of how he was and how his life was. But there's some just brilliance in there. It's 10 hours, so you can scroll through and kind of skim through and get into it. But they put a lot of other clips and things up there under a special section. So there's lots to occupy your time this weekend with that. Definitely recommended. The BBC has a great podcast that I have not checked out yet, but Burned says to check it out. And I've seen some of the reviews of it as being very, very good. It's All About Maradona is the name of it. It's from November 26th. Really good listen, he says, and that's one that I'll be jumping into here later. Let's get into the stuff today. It's soccer, it's football, there's controversy. That's kind of fitting on a weekend where we're talking a lot about Maradona. Kind of fitting we're talking about VAR on a weekend with Maradona after the English were begging for video replay in 1986, but some are not now because Liverpool had an interesting day with the video assistant referee. The two goals that were called back, are there real questions about them other than they were close? They were just close. So. They were just close calls.
Yeah, they're close.
And they were made correctly. Those have been lumped into the conversation, and this is where I get frustrated with VAR talk. When those calls were right. Were they right because of video? Yes, because it was very, very close. Do we know what the AR would have done if you didn't have video assistant referees? No, we don't necessarily know. We don't know how they would have called it. But by the letter of the law, it's offside. It's offside. You have the video to show it. It's offside. The penalty. I don't like the call. I don't like that call at all. I think it's incredibly soft.
Yeah.
Can you watch the video and find a penalty there? Yeah, you can. You can. Now, I was flipping around other games. I was watching some of the Serie A early on, and I missed this. Did you watch the Liverpool game live?
Bits and pieces of the second half, yes.
In that moment, did they call the penalty on the field, or did VAR call it?
This is what happens when you have the audio down.
Because that's an important. They did not call it. Okay, Ragamuffins got us. Thank you.
Thank you.
Then I really, really have a problem with the way it was done. I don't have a problem with VAR existing, as some do.
Right.
I have a problem with VAR overturning a no call. If that had been called a penalty on the field, I think it's hard to argue it's not from the replay. Because it is a kick there. I mean, I would not call it. I don't like the call. I understand the letters and the laws and all that. Yeah. I do not like that call at all.
I don't either.
I like it even less when it wasn't called on the field and the video assistant referee calls it, sees it, says it's a clear and obvious error, sends the referee to the screen, and at that point, it's very hard to not give it because there is something there. But this is where there is a difference for me. VAR on a referee or on an offside situation. VAR on was it inside the box or outside the box? Great, because VAR gives you the information and it is or it isn't. This is a gray area of is this a penalty? Is there contact? Yes. But is there a penalty here? I don't think there's any intent for the contact, and I know people are going to try to say, like, oh, well, you talked about contact with the John Gallagher penalty that then they overturned. Contact doesn't always do it. There is a talk about intent. There is a talk about the game situation. You do have to try to not just isolate it, put blinders on, and look at a video in slow-mo to find something. You have to watch the play out. And then you can use the replays to confirm questions you have about how it played out. These are the ones that I don't think VAR should get involved in. It's not clear and obvious that it was a bad call on the field.
Right.
And I don't have a problem with Liverpool being mad about that. Now, people are taking it to the super extreme of get rid of all of VAR, get rid of ever showing a replay on a TV broadcast. Yada, 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 yada.
No.
This is a bad call made by a video assistant referee for getting involved, and it is a bad call by the referee for allowing the involvement and then going along with the involvement. It's bad decisions by two human beings. That's the issue.
Yeah, no, I'm absolutely right there with you. When I was looking at the video, I thought that the penalty call was soft. Yes, there was contact, and also it took Danny Welbeck a couple of seconds and a couple of strides to fall down and hit the turf. And so for me, that accentuates my notion of it being a soft call in the first place. Yes, there was contact. Yes, I get it. But the overruling of the initial thought by center ref sends it to VAR, sends it to the penalty spot. And I'm like, no, I've got issues there.
Chris Abel has a comment, and I disagree with the premise, but I think it's a topic that needs to be discussed. He says, this is why I think they should go away from a VAR recommending a review. I think you need to do what the NFL or baseball does, where coaches or managers have to challenge a call they disagree with, then have a centralized VAR that's not on site to make the call. You got to have more parameters than that for me. I disagree with the idea of just letting them challenge something they don't like.
Right.
There's got to be very narrow parameters. You're going to get every penalty challenged, period. Yeah. You're going to get every red card challenged, period. And they're always being checked now, so I don't think anything changes there. I like the concept. I don't think it's the way. I don't think it's the system. I think it's the people. I think it's down to the people running it. And that's the same as referees in general. I mean, we can talk about the laws of the game, too, and there's issues there, and there's things that need to be cleaned up, but it's the people doing it that get it. Abby, yes, and they do, and the VAR, I mean, by the letter, yeah, they were able to get involved here because it's a penalty, and it's being reviewed. It's defining clear and obvious. It's defining when the video assistant referee says, yes, this is where I think you got it wrong, or what. And the referees need to find that balance, too, of saying, no, I saw it. I had a clean look at it. I don't have any questions about it. I'm good with my call. It's a balance because it's more information, and more information should help you make the right call. But in this case, I think it works you into a call that does it. Chris says, to be clear, I'd keep what VAR does now. PKs, goals, reds, mistaken identity, and I'd limit it to one challenge per team per game. If the coach's challenge is successful, they'd keep the challenge. If not, they'd lose it for the rest of the game. It's okay. I don't hate it. I have to see how it plays out. You'd have to trial it for me. I mean, it's the same questions come up that they do in other sports. Well, what happens if the referees make a bad call after you're out of challenges? I mean, I guess it's tough luck. So in this case, the referees would only be able. The VAR would basically be running a replay system, so it wouldn't be a referee. It'd be more of an engineer type of person. They would be providing the replays for the referee. If we were going to go down that road, Chris, and this is totally off the top of my head, I mean, this is something that would require a lot of thought and planning. I would then create the fourth official to be more involved with the crew than what they currently are. Because the way that Chris Abel's talking about this is you would basically take the extra referee, which is a video assistant referee, because they're a referee, take them out of the mix. That's just an engineering kind of job where they're showing replays. That's like a TV producer. Okay. So I would then give some of the kind of under the radar duties, I think, of the VAR that we don't know how involved they are in terms of communication, in terms of, hey, did you see that? Did you get a good look at that? That kind of stuff. Maybe the fourth official becomes a little bit more of that person of, and maybe they have a screen in front of them. And they say, hey, AR1, did you get a good look at that? AR2, did you get a look at that? Ref, did it come off the defender here when you're talking about offside? Stuff like that. You're swaying me a little bit, Christopher, but I think you have to. It's going to be something that would require a lot of thought in how you kind of restructure the way things have stepped in now with video assistant referees. For me, still the issues are more about the people than the actual system. It's more about the people. The offside law we can argue about all day if we want. That's a laws of the game question. That's separate from VAR, in my opinion. It's about the people who are involved. And I think sometimes the lack of consistency over how involved they are or want to be.
Yeah. I mean, as I like the idea of the challenge, and it's just trying to figure out how you would bring it in as a part of the overall equation and the logistics involved. But, once again, if that does happen, to your point, it's the idea of, okay, if you use your challenge, then if it's done incorrectly, is it one per half? Is it one per game? If you miss out on the challenge, what's the punitive end of it? On the flip side, if you're wrong, because
you
if
lose
you
the challenge.
So you lose the challenge.
That's just how football is.
Yeah, so I like the idea. I just would want to see how it would be implemented for something like that to be put in place.
I don't care, honestly, about that part of it. It's the whole concept of can it work? Can you make sense of it? I'm curious because I think VAR can be implemented better, and I want it to be implemented better, but a lot of it's down to the people. But there's also a lot of people who just complain when VAR goes against their team.
Right.
And they're not being really true in making correct arguments against it. They're just mad because it hurt their team.
Right.
And that part's got to stop. That part has to stop, at least in terms of taking it as seriously as we do. VAR can be better for situations like the Brighton goal today, not for the other two. VAR did its job there. You can argue about the offside law all you want.
Yes.
Ragamuffin not happy with VAR this morning.
No, Nathan Pugh on Twitter, live our pool. Am I right? That was basically
well, they've gotten a lot of benefit from VAR in the past, so let's not act like this has never happened before. But yes, this one went against them. The other two goals, look, 2 of the 3 were fine. Sorry, you cannot like him, but he's offside. This one was a bad call, and I don't think VAR should have gotten involved.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean the whole system's broken, and it doesn't mean everybody's against Liverpool either.
Correct.
Burned, Stuttgart is down 2-1 to Bayern. They should be up 3-2 or 4-2. Soft calls for Bayern and poor finishing. They jumped out in the lead because I was watching that. I had it up. They jumped out to the lead on a brilliant transition to open the scoring. And I mean, look, Bayern's really, really, really good. So they're going to come back and make it difficult. But it would be nice to see Stuttgart find a win on their manager Materazzo's birthday. He's 43 today. There's a great piece over at ESPN. Derek Ray wrote it about Pellegrino Materazzo, the manager at Stuttgart, American, which he's kind of under the radar in that regard because he didn't play in MLS. He wasn't a national team guy. We've talked about him a little bit here. Bernd has mentioned him a lot as a guy that he really likes. Developed under Nagelsmann at Hoffenheim as a manager, went over to Stuttgart, got them promoted, playing a lot of young players. The Derek Ray piece is really good to check out, highly recommended. And there's some other podcasts and things out there as well on Materazzo. If you're looking for up-and-coming young managers, he's a guy to keep an eye on for sure.
And then, of course, the late game today at 12:30 is the continuing saga of Schalke. And Schalke, of course, gets Borussia Mönchengladbach, juice boxes, or, since we're past Thanksgiving, we'll have to wait for Christmas. But, juice boxes have Borussia Mönchengladbach close to a minus 300.
Yeah, because Schalke is an absolute total mess.
Yes.
I mean, basically, you got a bunch of injuries. You got somebody with coronavirus. You got 3 players suspended. 2 of them are set to leave the club. The technical director left the club. The coach is finding it very hard to put together a team, but he says the disciplinary actions were necessary. Okay. Go check the highlights from yesterday, too, if you're looking for Bundesliga stuff. Wolfsburg and Werder Bremen, 5-3, Wolfsburg. Madness, absolute madness. Let's run through the other leagues in Europe really quick, just things to look for today. Inter's under some pressure after a loss in Champions League. The Inter Ultras are not very happy, and they're putting up banners threatening players with baseball bats, which is always a good sign. 2 goals in the first half, though. That's a good answer. Alexis Sanchez and an own goal. They were up 2-0 at the half.
They're 3.
3-0 now.
3-0 now in the 71st.
Okay, I said at the half. Good job. Christian Eriksen probably on the way out, and Beppe Marotta, the CEO at Inter, said if the player's not happy, he will be the first one asking to leave the club. Football is full of cases where players are not functional to the team. Basically said he got a really good deal, and he picked up Eriksen last January, and he hasn't fit. Not really a surprise he hasn't fit because Antonio Conte plays the same way all the time. So you wasted €20 million, but okay. You're going to sell him, and we'll see what you get. I don't think you'll get €20 million back. No. Atalanta had a big win at Liverpool this week. They're hosting Hellas Verona. Juventus visits Benevento. And one other big thing in Italy to keep an eye on, and this is going to come to a head in a couple of days. Benevento, Genoa, Lazio, Sampdoria, and Napoli, according to the Gazzetta dello Sport, have not paid their salaries since August. They have until December 1st to make up for that and avoid penalties. the financial issues in Italy are starting to come to a head. There's a whole list of other clubs that haven't paid since September, so they're going to be coming up for that next month. We'll see how they get it done. Speaking of finances, Barcelona did get a deal done, and this was vital because they were staring at bankruptcy. They reached an agreement with player representatives and coaching staff to temporarily cut salaries, postpone bonuses. They're going to save around 172 million euro, with 122 million euro from reductions to fixed wages this season and a further 50 million euro through the deferral of bonuses for 3 years. Now, I've seen all of this mentioned as deferrals over 3 years. There's a little bit of a confusion there. Are they just kicking the can down the road on paying the players their full amounts, or did they actually get pay cuts for a temporary period of time? That'll take a little bit more investigation. It's critical because they're out of money. I mean, they're looking at going bankrupt in January. This might be enough to get them over the line. So alongside of that, you got a big change in the presidential election coming up at Barca. Joan Laporta, who has been a president at Barcelona, he was there from 2003 to 2010. Pretty good times for Barcelona, if you remember correctly. He is expected to officially announce his candidacy on Monday. He would jump into being the favorite in the election. He would jump ahead of Victor Font. Now, couple things. Vera Brunati, Argentine reporter, has said that she's heard Lionel Messi has told Laporta, who was there when Messi was breaking through, that Messi wants to stay at the club. And I know, and we've had this conversation many, many times, people are like, he's going to leave, he's going to leave, he's going to leave. He doesn't care. He cares deeply about Barcelona. He's never played anywhere else. And the loyalty, even if the club doesn't deserve it for the way they've treated him at times, is very, very, very strong. So if Laporta is going to be the favorite here, that changes everything, I think, with Messi, and he might stay. Now, there's already rumors out there because Laporta is good friends and close with Mino Raiola. There's already rumors linking Erling Haaland to a move to Barcelona, and this is going to be one of the recurring things. You have to remember right now, any rumors about Barcelona are going to be tied to the presidential election. They don't have money to really work with. I don't think they're going to raise a bunch of money through sales in January. Those kinds of moves, whether it's Haaland, whether it's Neymar, which has popped up. I mean, I think somebody was trying to link Sergio Ramos to Barcelona. I mean, it's just ridiculous. Like, you're going to get all these rumors that are crazy. Not many of them are actually anything to pay attention to anytime soon. It's all about the presidential election. You're going to get some candidate say, well, I'm going to be able to go get Harry Kane because I know so-and-so and he knows so-and-so and they know so-and-so, and I'm going to bring Harry Kane to Barcelona. But that's what happens. I mean, that's how this goes. We've mentioned it before about David Beckham when he was already set. I think it was somebody running against Laporta who was like, I'm going to bring David Beckham. He was already going to go to Real Madrid. That wasn't going to change. So get ready for more madness. But if Laporta jumps in, then the presidential election race is completely changed at Barcelona. They play tomorrow. Serginho Dest is a doubt for it. Ronald Koeman said that it's not serious. He came back really tired after the Champions League match in Kiev. Had some muscle problems. They don't want to risk anything right now, even though they're very shorthanded. So he might not play. He trained today, but it's just they don't want to push anything with him. Real Madrid hosts Alaves. Atletico's going for their 6th win in a row when they host Valencia this morning, and Yunus Musa is in the lineup for Valencia. Atleti's 3 points behind Real Sociedad. Real Madrid is in 4th. England, what else we have the rest of the day in England?
We have Manchester City with a 2-0 lead on Burnley in the 37th. Riyad Mahrez scored 6 minutes in. They've got another one to follow up on that. Everton and Leeds is at 12:30. Everton at home is a plus 122. Leeds is a plus 215. And 3 o'clock, West Brom and Sheffield United, which will set the ratings a flitter with all of the tens of people interested in watching that one. Pretty much looking at that one as a draw across the board. 3 matches tomorrow and 2 on Monday.
One other rumor linked to Barcelona involves Leeds. Reportedly, they've been in contact with the agent of Riqui Puig, trying to get a loan deal done. He's not playing at Barcelona and don't really know why. It's been reported multiple different places that the agent is looking for a place for him to go. Puig reportedly doesn't want to leave Barcelona. He wants to fight for a spot, turn down loan options before the season started. He might take one in January because he's not playing. And he'd be an interesting fit for Leeds. I think he's got the right kind of characteristics to make it work. What's Derby doing today? Are they playing this morning?
Yeah, efforting quickly. I was zooming to see what else was going on in other countries. So the championship, as we click on that, yes, Derby and, a battle at the bottom with Derby and Wickham, goalless in the 35th.
Wayne Rooney is in charge of that match. Remember, when they fired Cocu, they did like a committee approach. Well, they lost 2 games, and the committee decided to push Rooney out front of it, and the other 3 are kind of supporting him as assistants. So he's also said that if he gets the job full-time, that he's going to retire. He's not going to play anymore. He said, if I'm managing the team for a longer scale, I don't think it's possible to manage and play. And he wants the job. He wants it. He said for now, they all feel like one voice rather than a committee is what is needed for the team. If they get a win today, could that maybe change things to where Wayne Rooney gets the job full time? I don't know. It'd be interesting. But he said he'll retire. If that opportunity comes, he's going to take it and he's going to retire. What else has grabbed your attention around the world in the last couple of days?
Well, I mean, I talked about what happened this morning in the post-match between Des Kelly of BT and Jurgen Klopp, where Klopp, I think it was an 8-minute exchange, and folks are referring to it as the soccer version of Frost Nixon, with Des Kelly and Jurgen Klopp, and Klopp was discussing injuries,
hyperbole,
5 subs, and he went off on the fact that they were the 12:30 game again, and so it was a very long exchange. James Knowlton has the first part of it in discussing what was going on with Kelly, and Des Kelly was asking the questions of Jurgen Klopp, and so James Milner was taken off during the match because of an injury. Des Kelly says, James Milner, hamstring is Klopp. Yeah, congratulations. And so Kelly goes, me personally, Klopp. No, but you work for them, yeah? Hamstring, surprise. And they had injuries as well because it's a tough time. Ask Chris Wilder how we can avoid that. Des Kelly. Maybe you're firing at the wrong target. We're broadcasters. We work within Premier League rules, and the Premier League makes the rules. That's the Premier League clubs, so shouldn't you be talking to PL clubs? Klopp. I don't know how often I have to say it. You pick us for 12:30 kickoffs. Des Kelly. The PL clubs chose that slot. Klopp. These are difficult times. Des Kelly, of course it's difficult.
The broadcasters stop there for a second. They're arguing about two different things, and this is really stupid. They're both being a little disingenuous here in the way they're arguing this. Like, yes, Des Kelly does not pick the game to air. The broadcaster does not just pick the game to air. It's also not a vote among the Premier League clubs. I don't know the process. I don't know how Liverpool got picked for this game. I also think that the whole idea about the 12:30 kickoffs is maybe a little overblown, because does an extra 3 hours really make a difference? Yeah. Now, if you want to talk about playing and working out your schedule, but the problem is you can't, and it's not just the Premier League that's the issue. If, say, you did not have midweek this week, because you have Champions League this week, right? Again? So you can't say, well, we're going to play the Champions League teams that played on Wednesday the prior week. We'll let them play on Sunday on the weekend, which is what you would normally do, where they're going to have a normal week the following week. Then they'd have like 6 days before the next game. They'd play the next Saturday. Well, right now, you're just stuck on both ends of it. It's not about the 12:30 kickoff in England, the 7:30 a.m. kickoff here. It's about the days and the extra days, but it's also about the European competition. And there's no way around that. Like, that's not a broadcaster thing. That's not a Premier League thing. Klopp is attacking the broadcaster in, I think, a little bit unfair way, and the broadcaster is trying to change the subject to something different and kind of missing the point. Go ahead.
Yeah. So Klopp continues. He says, I'm not having a go at the broadcasters. I just say how it is. 12:30 after Wednesday is really dangerous for the players.
It's not about 12:30. It's about the day. If you played on Sunday, we're having a different conversation. I mean, if you're playing at 12:30 or you're playing at 3 o'clock, does it really matter?
Yeah. So then Des Kelly says, if it's about player welfare, why did the PL clubs block 5 subs?
Also true.
Because when we had the talk between the managers a week ago, it was 55, if not 60% 5 subs, but since then, nothing happened. Chris Wilder, or whoever, constantly say I'm selfish. I think all the things show that he's selfish, but that's not too important. I was in a similar situation as he is when I worked at Mainz, all about staying in the league. They now have 3 subs and 1 point. So there's no advantage or disadvantage. If you can do 5 subs, it's not for tactical reasons. For example, if we have 5 subs today, I take off Robbo and bring on Costas to save him, not to make our game better. It's not only my players that have that problem. From now to December, you will see it.
Yeah, I disagree with the small club argument at this point. It is selfish. He's absolutely right there. You're not making 2 extra subs for tactical reasons. Yes, you can bring on fresh legs, and yes, you have better fresh legs to bring on. These things are accurate. That's on your team, and that's on recruitment, and that's on money, and all those things are real. But from a tactical perspective, and we've seen it so many times, you bring on a bunch of subs at one time, it destabilizes the team.
Yeah,
you have freshness, but it destabilizes things tactically. It's not ideal. It's about safety at this point because the safety overwhelms the argument for me about small teams and unfair advantages and all that. Yes, Chris Wilder is being selfish. The Premier League has to get this done and allow 5 subs. Way too many injuries. It's got to stop. You're going to have injuries even with 5 subs, but it's better with 5. And when the rest of the world all sees that it's better with 5 and you're being obstinate to say that it's not, that's on the Premier League as a group. Old Des here is being a little unfair because he's like jumping down Jurgen Klopp's throat about it, and Jurgen Klopp's been consistent. He wants 5 subs. Yeah. So that's a little goofy, and that's creating a red herring. The issue is the small teams that are consistently voting against 5 subs for no good reason. Go ahead.
No, Nathan Pugh just said he pulled his other hamstring.
You're going to have more. That's just what it is.
Yeah.
That's just what it is. Yeah. What else has caught your attention here lately?
I was in Maradona mode for the last couple days, and now I'm just getting caught back up to what's going on in the world. Manchester City has another goal on the board, by the way, as they get close to halftime. So
you say that like it's a surprise.
No, but it's like I turn and I see a third goal added. As I'm sitting here.
I know. I'm just saying it's not a surprise that Manchester City is scoring goals. They're playing a very bad team, right?
Yeah, they're playing, yes. And you would think that with a team that has prided itself on defense as much as Burnley has, that it might be a little closer, but not right now.
You would think that Manchester City and Burnley would be a little closer. Okay.
I'm talking like the whole Champions League, schedule compression, getting in, and just all of this. I would have thought that it might have been a goal or 2, but yeah, Manchester City is just charging.
Stop. It doesn't make a difference. 3-2, whatever. They're winning dominantly. They got Gabriel Jesus back. They don't have Sergio Aguero back. There was a late, I think, injury scare as he is almost fully back. But again, you're not going to risk anything at this point. Other stuff, and Matias Almeyda is on the board here behind me, and the reason why is there are reports out of Mexico that Monterrey is very interested in him again, and they were interested in him previously. Now, according to Radio Formula in Mexico, and this is from Alan Chavez, Almeyda will take the job if Monterrey signs Alan Pulido and Rodolfo Pizarro. Pulido reportedly has talked to Almeyda and is interested in going back to Mexico after a good year in Kansas City. Pizarro, that was a mess with leaving Monterrey in the first place and going to Miami, and Miami paid a lot of money. I don't know how you work that one out if you do. If that's the condition of him taking it, it might be a challenge for him to take it. We'll see. That's one report linking those 2 moves as conditions. Also, if you're looking at talent from Monterrey that could be available, two players who kind of lost their spot, who I think still have something to give, and maybe have something to give to an MLS team if they are so persuaded. Aviles Hurtado and Dorlan Pabon could be on the way out. There are potential links with them going back to Colombian teams. If that's out there, MLS start making some phone calls. San Jose is also linked to a player out of Peru, Matias Almeyda. He's a 21-year-old Peruvian kind of / American, and there's questions about that. His father has American citizenship, it sounds like. There's questions on if he does. He's a 21-year-old, 6'2", left-footed forward who scored 11 goals in 17 matches in the Apertura and doesn't have a goal in 8 matches in the Clausura yet. Valued at like $300,000. He plays for a smaller team, Deportivo Municipal. That's an interesting one. If he has American citizenship, it's an absolute no-brainer if he doesn't take up an international slot. If he does, it's maybe a little bit trickier. Montreal announced their roster moves. They did not pick up the option on Boyan, but they are negotiating about a new contract. I'm guessing the option number was large, and they wanted to renegotiate.
Yeah.
DC has a new manager in the mix for their vacancy, Rodolfo Borrell. He is a current assistant with Pep Guardiola at Manchester City. He was a former Barcelona youth coach at La Masia from 95 to 2008. Yes, do the math, start thinking back. That would be Messi, that would be Fabregas, that would be Xavi, that would be Iniesta. He coached them as kids. He went to Liverpool in 2009, did a lot of different roles in their academy, their reserve team, went to Manchester City in 2014 and joined Pep on the bench with the first team in 2016. He's never been a manager, first team level, senior level. He's 49 years old. Feels like a high risk, high reward kind of option. I didn't expect that from DC, to be perfectly honest. So keep an eye on that one. That was Pablo Maurer pretty late last night. He dropped that news. The U.S. women yesterday won 2-0, comfortable. Really weren't even tested against the Netherlands. Very disappointed in the Dutch performance. They just were not that good. Rose Lavelle with a beautiful goal. Christy Mewis gets her first goal in like 2,200 days for the U.S. women's national team, which is awesome. Great NWSL performances from Christy Mewis. She gets the reward to get called up. She gets a reward with a goal. You had 9 of the 11 U.S. starters from the World Cup final against the Netherlands. Alex Morgan was one who came on in the second half, her first appearance since that match. Megan Rapinoe would have been the other one, and she was not called in. Carly Lloyd was not called in. They haven't played, so they're not fit. You can't call them in. The Dutch coach, Serena Wiegman, who is going to become the England coach, remember, she was not with the team. And it was a personal matter not related to COVID-19. No clue what that means. You also had the UEFA Women's Champions League draw. That's going to start on December 9th in Europe. Lyon is the European champion 7 times out of the past 10. That's the team you're going to be watching. Wolfsburg has been the runner-up in 2 of the past 3. That's another team to watch. You're also going to be watching the English teams with players that we're starting to get a little more accustomed to. Chelsea is in that. They play Benfica. It's going to be a knockout bracket with 32 teams, and the format's going to change to 16 teams in a group stage next year. So that all gets started here. I hope CBS All Access has all of the games for the tournament, not just some of the later ones. So keep an eye on that. Keep an eye on Vanderbilt football today.
There you go. I was going to ask if you wanted to get into this too.
Well, yeah. I mean, it's a story. We'll see if she plays. Sarah Fuller, who's the goalkeeper for Vanderbilt's women's soccer team, who won the SEC title last weekend, she is number 17 on the football team today. They've had a bunch of issues with their kickers, and she is available to play today. No women has appeared in an SEC game or a Power 5 football team game. You've had a few who've played NAIA and Division 2 and 3, maybe even just Division 3, over the years. It's a handful. But Sarah Fuller could be the first one to play in a Power 5 game, first one to play in the SEC. Some clips of her kicking. Said it's an honor that Vanderbilt called on her to help out. She's been their goalkeeper for, I think, most of her 4 years. She started there, and she made 3 saves in the upset win for Vandy. They beat Arkansas 3-1 in the SEC final.
Katie Nida, I think a lot of folks might remember her from her time at New Mexico, where she was on for kicking, I want to say it was a field goal attempt. She was on the New Mexico roster. She'll be wearing number 32 because she wore 32 for Vanderbilt soccer. She's going to have on her helmet.
Oh, they must have changed it because they've taken pictures of her in number 17.
Okay. Okay, so we have dueling numbers. She'll have Play Like a Girl on her helmet. Explains that it's a nonprofit that encourages girls to play sports and get exposure to STEM opportunities. And so very, very cool if she makes it on the field. Very, very cool that Derek Mason and Vanderbilt would want to go down this route in the first place. Looking forward to watching Vanderbilt football today. And I never thought I would ever have that as an independent phrase on a Saturday morning.
Well, I mean, it's not very cool that they got into this situation because they have a bunch of injuries. And there's not a lot of solutions. And please do not even worry about Jason Whitlock being a stupid idiot. Don't even tweet about it. Don't even worry about it. If you don't know what I'm talking about, you're better off for it. Don't
Good, then I won't.
worry about Jason Whitlock being a moron. Google's your friend. You can actually answer your own questions before you try to make stupid drama and be disrespectful to women. So, Jason Whitlock, you're an idiot. How about that?
Yeah.
And you're not. I take that back. You're not an idiot because you're smarter than this and you know exactly what you're doing, and it's embarrassing. And stop disrespecting female athletes. All right. Last one before we get into Twitter and the Twitch pitch to clean it up. You have an African Champions League champion from yesterday, and it's Al Ahly. They won their 138th trophy in this game. They lost in the final in 17 and 18. First win in the African Champions League since, I guess it would have been 2013, first win in 7 years. It was a late goal to win it. It was a very entertaining game. It was on BN. I think if you have Fanatis, it's available to watch now after the fact. It's definitely one to at least check the highlights out. You had some amazing goals in this one. But Al Ahly, it looked like it was headed to extra time, and they said not so fast. They get the goal late to win it, and they are your champions, and they added another trophy to the case. All right, what else do we have on Twitter as we wrap up in a Power Hour?
Nathan continues to pull his hamstring and other hamstrings across the board as he continues to discuss Liverpool. That's pretty much it on the Twitter side.
Okay, thanks. Hope you do better with that, Nathan. Burned with a good point about the coach's challenge idea. He said there's no coach's challenges in any other sports in the rest of the world that he's aware of. It'd be a strange concept for people outside the U.S., I thought maybe rugby had it, but I might be wrong. I don't know the situation. Gustavo with a good point, too, about VAR, and this is something that I know FIFA and IFAB have tried to balance. He says you can only use it in pro games. Like if you're in an amateur game, a national amateur game, a local amateur game, if you're in like a U19 game, whatever, you might not have the technology to do VAR in these situations. So you have to use common sense when you're creating the platforms for the technology. He said, most of us who play soccer just want a good referee. This is a game, not a trial in court. It needs to be fun and interesting. As a technologist, you can't use it to eliminate the referee's judgment, but to help him in some extraordinary situations. That's a perfect explanation of it, Gustavo. It needs to be an assistance. It needs to be like an assistant referee, as opposed to somebody who is jumping over it. If you're going to have somebody jump over it, then they have to be separate. They have to only do VAR. They have to be in a centralized location. You have to go down that road. You got to show me. I think that can work, but I need to see that. I need to see somebody trial it. I need to see somebody show it. Otherwise, in the situation you're using it in now, it needs to be the equivalent of putting up a flag, of buzzing the referee with your little buzzer on your flag, or saying something on the headset. Hey, did you see that? Did you have a good look at that? I have a different look. ARs do that in general, right? I mean, before you had video assistant referees, ARs would tell referees, like, hey, I saw it. He kicked him. Hey, you didn't see this. You were on the other end of the field, but he punched this guy. Like, they would help with those things. Video assistant referees need to be the same way. They need to be used the same way. And right now they're not always. They're almost like a omnipotent force above everything, and it can't be that way. It's got to be help the referee make the right call. Gustavo, you nail it with the way you explain it. Abby listened on 92.9 yesterday. Said I did a good job. Thank you, Abby.
I listened as well on the drive back in.
Me and Chris had a good conversation with a lot of different things. We had Jeff Kassouf from the Equalizer on. It was great to talk women's national team with him. They're running. I think they're still running it, a Black Friday subscription special, like half off for the year. And if you're looking for more on the women's game, they're absolutely the outlet to do it. Jeff has tirelessly built the Equalizer into a major brand in the women's game. So it was good to talk to him. We had lots of other conversations about soccer on the show, among other things. And it's always fun to talk to Chris. Chris has good questions about soccer because I like guys who are not, like lifetime soccer guys who take it seriously and ask questions from their perspective, because a lot of times if you are a soccer guy, you kind of take some things for granted. And when questions come at you from that perspective, it makes you think for a minute. And he asked great questions about like team construction and team building from just a sports perspective, which is really good. So we got into a lot of that. You can still check it out, at least some of it, on the radio.com app. It's 24 hours it stays up, so you got to scroll all the way back quickly. I think you've missed some of the good stuff, though. Sorry. Maybe it's up there on the podcast. I'm not sure. But thanks for listening, Abby, and thanks for listening, John. Brian Reynolds from FC Dallas is being linked to Juventus, according to the Third Degree, which is another great site out of Dallas covering FC Dallas. I would not be surprised to see him go to Europe. I feel like maybe it's a little early, and the numbers that were bandied about were a little higher than I would have expected. Reynolds is a talent. He might end up being better than Reggie Cannon at right back. I kind of think he will, but he's younger and he's less experienced. So now I think it's not realistic. In another year, I think it could be realistic. So keep an eye on Brian Reynolds potentially moving to Juventus in January. A lot of our discussion, which is great. J-Dub says Barca still has to cut like $70 million to make it under the La Liga recommendation. True. I don't think there's any meat behind that recommendation, though. So if this is all they can do before they get to January, where maybe they sell some people, I don't know. It's a good step in the right direction. Christopher Abel says, could you see Messi coaching at Barca after he retires? I don't see him as a coach. I don't know what he does, though, because, and this is part of the topic that's come up about Maradona, and I wish I could remember where I first heard it, but it echoes a conversation I had with Gustavo about Maradona here in the last year or so. When you're somebody like Messi and Maradona, and they're very different people, but on the field they have a lot of similarities. They live for the ball, for having the ball, for playing. And when they can't play anymore, how do they fill that? It's not easy. The conversation, I think it was Gustavo who I first heard this idea from, and I totally agree with him, is that as much as when Diego Maradona took over at Gimnasia, the goal was to save Gimnasia from being relegated, Gimnasia saved him.
Yeah.
I mean, just having something to do in the game. Like, yes, he didn't always look well, and he was moving a little bit slower, and he'd had some surgeries, and yes, he had some alcohol issues as well. He got the love that he deserved around the country and around the league, and that was very cool to see. Messi, I don't think, has some of the same personal issues. He doesn't have the demons that Maradona has, obviously, that we don't know about, and I don't think he does. But how do you fill that emptiness when you can't play anymore? I wouldn't have thought of Maradona as a coach, but it was his way to stay connected to the game. I don't see Messi as like a commentator. I don't think he has that personality. I don't think he'd want to. Would he want to coach? Maybe, but would he want to coach at a high level? I mean, he might just want to coach in the academy or something. And I could honestly see that being a great fit for somebody like Lionel Messi. Like, I don't see him as an administrator, as a director of football. Like, I don't see him going down those roads. Like, I guess I keep coming back to the idea of maybe him coaching in the academy and being connected with the club and staying with the club and being an ambassador for the club and doing all those kinds of things, but coaching kids. Maybe that's the right fit for him. Maradona needed the stage. So, I mean, that wasn't going to work for him. He needed that stage because he got used to having the love from the public, and when he didn't have it, then he got self-destructive. And it's sad. It's something that a few people talked about, but the pandemic, it sounds like he really struggled with it, and it sounds like he really struggled with not being in public and not being on the touchline, and that kind of started the decline for him, and it makes a lot of sense when you kind of follow his story. Okay, do you have to go because you have to jump in with the Canadian crew?
Yes, I do.
Okay. Then what I need you to do is hold that thought for just a second not that. I don't need you to do that. I need you to hold that thought while I pull my video up separately.
Okay.
To be able to replace this, so I'll keep going for just a little bit, not super long, guys. But I'll keep talking with you for a little bit because we got a lot of stuff to talk about.
Yeah, it's good to be back.
You see the behind the scenes of making all this work, if it decides to work, and I guess it doesn't want to work. That's always good. Give me 1 second. Actually, you know what? I'm not going to show you the video, but I'm going to go back to the opening slide because that way you'll still hear me even without John on camera. So, John, say goodbye.
Goodbye. I will see you guys. It's good to be with you. Mucho plot, y'all.
All right. And, John, we'll be talking to you on Monday.
Be good. Bye.
All right. So you guys can still hear me, and that's John signing off on Skype. We'll finish up with the questions. We had so much to get into. I didn't want to leave y'all's questions out, so I wanted to finish up with them. It's a good question, Chris. I think it's the academy for Messi. Chris, yes, Rooney is managing and playing right now, and it happens from time to time. It's not completely unheard of. They fired their manager, and they turned to him because he was there as a player coach. He's obviously a huge figure. He's well respected. So I get it. I don't think he wants to retire as a player just yet. If he's not going to be a manager full time, he'd like to stay as a player coach, be part of a staff. But if they give him the job, then they give him the job. And then he would step down because then it becomes a different conversation. Ragamuffin, thank you. And this is all stuff that I don't know how all the broadcast works. I agree that Klopp's whining a little bit about it too much. There's other things he needs to zero in on at the moment. He says they changed kickoff times for broadcasters to accommodate European clubs in Saturday versus Sunday. Agree. I don't know how much of a difference it makes, and I don't actually have it pulled up. I can pull it up right now. Playing at 12:30 versus, putting them in the late kickoff on Saturday? If we wanted to do that to give them a little more time, would 6 hours make a difference when we're talking about hamstrings? I don't know. Would an extra day? Yeah, but then you look at next week, and they play on Tuesday in Champions League, so you couldn't play on Sunday. So you had to play today, and you could argue that the early kickoff today was as much about the Tuesday game against Ajax as last week's game in Champions League, because Champions League is madness. And you've got 2 more weeks of it. I mean, Liverpool played today at 12:30 local time. We'll do it in U.S. time so we don't get confused. So 7:30 a.m. today. They play Tuesday at 3. Then they do play next Sunday at 2:15. So they play a late kick on Sunday. And then it's a short turn to a 12:55 kick on Wednesday the 9th. Then it's an 11:30 kick on December the 13th at Fulham. Then it's a midweek game in the Premier League at home to Tottenham on the 16th. Then they go to Crystal Palace at 7:30, another early kick, on the 19th. Then they actually have a full week off before you get into the festive fixtures, which gets stupid anyway. So between now and December 19th, we'll include today, Liverpool plays 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 games between now and the 19th. Then they go into the festive fixtures where they do play 3 games in like a week. Then you get a little bit of a gap again. more hamstrings. Klopp does have to stop whining ragamuffin. I think it's hurting his effectiveness with what he's saying a little bit. He's got to be a little more measured. And that's just, he's got to control a little bit better. Chris says, would you be in favor of going back to 3 subs once COVID ends and scheduling goes back to normal? I think so. Maybe you settle at 4. I haven't been bothered by 5 subs. I do understand the argument about it gives big teams potentially an advantage depending on how they structure. I think that advantage is negated right now because of the pandemic and the amount of games they're playing. Whatever advantage they'd get from it, it's negated by just the scheduling. So I disagree with the argument now that you can't go to 5. In a normal schedule, could you? You could. I think that advantage might be accentuated a little bit then. I wonder if maybe they go in between. I'll be curious to see what the argument is. I don't know if the argument against 5 subs is as strong outside of England. I don't know if that's just an English thing or what. But it will be a conversation for next season. And it sounds like IFAB is going to allow it to still be an option for the upcoming season. And they meet in March. So there's a lot of time between now and March. Things could look differently. That's when they'll make their final decisions. It looks like it's going to be on the table to stay approved for next year. After that, then we'll have to see. But by then we'll have a lot of information on it. We'll know a little bit more about where things stand, and we'll have a better sense of what direction to go. I don't hate the 5 subs at all, in general. If you want to compromise and go to 4, I don't hate that either. Badger asks why Rose Lavelle is not playing for Manchester City. I don't get it either. There was reportedly a knock in training. That's why she didn't play. I've seen some people say that she hasn't played all that well at Manchester City because they've been playing her in a position that doesn't really suit her. I haven't followed them super closely, so I don't want to weigh in too heavily here. Sometimes just adjusting to a new club and manager and group of players can be difficult. And maybe it's just that period of time for her. I'm not sure. She had a beautiful goal yesterday, so that's a good sign. Hopefully that will give Manchester City an idea of if they're using her in a different role, maybe they put her in a role that suits her a little bit more. We'll see. I don't get it, though. I really don't get it. JW, yeah, this is awesome about Vanderbilt. It's very cool. I mean, it's not awesome that you have the injuries and the absences of players who are there. That part stinks. But if she gets on the field, it's very cool. It is not a gimmick. It is not a PR story, as some people who are being very disingenuous would try to tell you. It's a necessity. Again, injuries and absences. I mean, you're stuck, and this is what you have to do, and this is what they're going to do. So if she gets the opportunity and makes full advantage of it, that'll be very, very cool. Byrne says Lavelle had a poor game in the FA Cup final. Girls playing behind her outplayed her, changed the game when they came in. If it's based on current form, there you go. I have seen the positioning argument too, Byrne, and you'd have to tell me if that's different. And D. Graham says it is. She's not a left winger. She could be, but if she's better at playing inverted and cutting into the right, or cutting in from the right, then you gotta understand that if you're the manager. J-Dub says Klopp is the Dabo Swinney of the Premier League. Man, that's kind of right. That's kind of scary. He's the German Dabo? Ooh. I kind of like that, J-Dub. I'm not going to lie. I feel kind of bad about liking it, but I kind of like that. A lot of conversation with Byrne and D. Graham about positioning and Lavelle and playing, on the left wing as a number 10 to, kind of influence a game there. You definitely can. Could she play better in other positions? Sure. Absolutely. Do you need to find a way to get her on the field? I think you do. I absolutely think that you do. And maybe this goal will spark it. Maybe this goal will just give her some confidence, too. And that's the biggest thing. Shiva, share your source on that. Very interested in this. Shiva reports, and I'm sure Shiva's seen it from somewhere else, unless she's got inside info, that George Bello just got called up to the December camp. I've not seen an official announcement yet, but I could have missed it while we're doing a show and such. That's awesome. I didn't expect that. I thought maybe January, because I thought January might be more of the U23s or even U20s to take a look at. That's very cool. That's very, very cool. Couple other things. Columbus, it is alleged that they have had 6 positive coronavirus tests, and they play Sunday night against Nashville. Sam Stejkal tweeted a little while ago that as of now, that match is still set to take place as scheduled. It's the same conversation we've had, and we talked about it on 98.29 yesterday. Like, I think people get hung up on, this could put Nashville in jeopardy. No, it's more the issue for Columbus. And if everybody else has tested okay, and there's been a couple more positives, so that's a big question mark. That is not a definite right now. Then it's more about keeping the rest of the Columbus squad healthy. And if they can't do that, then you've got an issue. Now, Miami had reportedly 5 positives, 3 first-team players, 2 who were not going to play in the game who tested positive. We don't know the identities here of the Columbus players. But Shiva says the source is DSS. Are they reliable? It depends on where they're pulling it from, if they're pulling it from somewhere. Let me see if they have a link. I don't know the answer to the Columbus-Nashville situation. You don't want to advance by forfeit if Columbus can't play. You could push that game back because you have Western Conference semifinals going Tuesday and Wednesday. You could push that game back to Wednesday, as late as Wednesday if you needed to. I would do that before I would cancel it. If they can't play it tomorrow night, push it back to Wednesday, give as much time as possible, and then play it. And then it's going to depend on how you can shift things around. So Dirty South Soccer is reporting, and Joe Patrick has it, that he has been called up. A source tells Dirty South Soccer. Okay, so Joe has the update here, it sounds like. And it's unknown yet whether Bello will go because the dates could overlap with CONCACAF Champions League training for Atlanta United. Edgar Castillo is no longer with the team. He will not be part of that. His option was not picked up. So left back cover, it could be Anton Walks. You didn't call up a left back from Atlanta United 2 to train, at least in the initial list, but could you make a shift? Potentially, could you play somebody out of position there? Potentially, could you play differently to account for this? You could. We've seen Franco Escobar as a left back on occasion. So, yeah, it's a tough situation for Atlanta United because this is a camp outside of an international window. You have this CONCACAF game, which you're down 3-0. I know, but it is a competitive game. That's a tough one. It would be his first senior national team call-up. Bayern just put the game away with a 3rd goal. Stuttgart's had a lot of opportunities. They're a team to watch. But Bayern puts that game away at 3-1. I don't know. You'd like to see Bello get this opportunity. I thought he was a little further away from it than this. But if you're looking at him potentially for Olympics and U20s next year, you want to take a look at him if you're Greg Berhalter. Does the club let him go? It just depends on if they can cover the left back position for CONCACAF Champions League. Because you do have to think. I mean, you can't just completely throw the game away. You can't say that you're not gonna win it, so we don't care. Because if you win it, then you have another game, and you got to be ready to play that. He would be back before the game with CONCACAF. He would be back for that. He would just miss the beginning of camp and even into the second week of camp. So maybe you do it and he still plays. It's possible. It's a risk, but it's possible. So stay tuned. As Joe points out in the article, if Bello does get the chance to go, he'd be the first Atlanta United homegrown player to receive such an opportunity. So very, very cool. I thought George Bello had a great year. There were people who argued against that. I disagree. I think Bello had a great year. I think he still has room to grow. He's also still a teenager, and he has an opportunity to grow. So looking forward to seeing that. But this is a good thing. Even if he doesn't get the opportunity to go to the camp, it is a good thing that he is being looked at in that way. Burned about Stuttgart. So many chances, playing an awesome game. Bayern just has too many weapons. It's too bad. Yeah, I mean, that's the challenge. Stuttgart has to be perfect. I believe it was Steve Cherundolo who was talking about this earlier on the broadcast. You know, teams are figuring Bayern out. We talked about it last, feels like forever ago, but it was like August, during the Champions League games, where Bayern's like, we're going to play our game, and we're going to give you a lot of space, and you know that, and we know you know that, but we think we're better than you. Teams are figuring out ways to hurt Bayern, but they are banking on the fact that they are better. They're just better than you. And they know that you know what they're going to do, but they're going to outplay you. And I think you're seeing it. Cherundolo mentioned Stuttgart, mentioned Hoffenheim specifically. You're seeing more teams exploit issues with Bayern, but there's very few who can beat them even if they do exploit them, because you have to almost be perfect, because Bayern will find their goals. There's no way around it. Cherundolo is very good, Burned. I totally agree. I've liked him on commentary. I mean, just looking up right now, like Bayern with a 3-1 lead is still like incredibly open, and just almost gave Stuttgart a great counter opportunity. It didn't materialize because they recovered well. They are going to commit to the way they play, and they're not going to change for anybody. You can respect that. You can definitely respect that. You do root for the underdog from time to time, but you can respect that they are going to be who they are going to be. No question. All right. Caught up. That about does it here on the show. We'll be back on Monday, normal time. We might, and I'm really leaning to doing it since we missed a couple of days. I'm very tempted to do a MLS or just an SDH preview show before Orlando, New England tomorrow afternoon. Tweet at us when you hear this if you're listening live. If not, and let us know if you'd be interested in that. We might do just a look at the MLS playoffs, kind of preview the conference semifinals in general. We'll give you an update on Columbus and Nashville, because I'm sure there will be one by tomorrow afternoon. We'll preview Orlando, New England in a big way, and any other news that's going on in the world, because I'm sure there'll be plenty happening this weekend with different things. Check out the different podcasts we've talked about Maradona if you're interested. Watch the documentary again. I might watch it again this weekend. I'll be listening to that BBC podcast because I haven't had a chance to check it out yet. And Burned also sent me a good one on Matarazzo. And now after watching some of this game, I'm really interested in seeing more and more and learning more and more. So we'll be back on a normal schedule next week. 9 o'clock shows in the morning, and then we'll have soccer over there on Monday evening. And then anything else that pops up, we'll be here. So J-Dub wants us to do it, all the previews, all the news. Plus, I can tell John how bad Auburn is after they lose to Bama today, and I am in full support of that. Any chance I get to crack on Auburn, I will take it. Sorry, Auburn listeners. I know y'all like to give me some nonsense as well. That's what we do. That's college football. It happens. All right, y'all have a good rest of the day. Enjoy your weekend. We'll be back on Monday. We'll probably be back tomorrow for at least something in some form or fashion. So, mucho plati, y'all.